Mastering the musical modes is a milestone that every guitarist needs to conquer if they want to truly unlock their instrument. It's a concept that many find difficult and confusing, but it doesn't have to be. Today, I'm going to get you understanding the musical theory behind modes and the unique application it has for guitar. Here we go. So the first thing that we got to figure out is what even are modes. And while I'm going to do my best to explain this stuff in a way that anybody can understand, if the concept of music theory is completely new to you or you just need a brush up, I've got a video that can take care of that for you. Link in the description as well. I've got a free ebook that goes over a whole bunch of rudimentary information. If you need that, link to that in the description as well. But one of the fundamental pieces of musical information is the structure of the major scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So why don't we pull up the C major scale, which is when you play all the notes between C and a C using no sharps and no flats. And this collection of notes is called the key of C. And so let me tell you what a mode is, and it's as simple as this. You take any note in a key and then play to that same note an octave higher using notes from the respective key. That will give you a mode. So we got the C major scale here at the key of C, starting on the second note of the scale, which is D, and playing all the notes from C major until we get to the D. An octave higher is a mode of C. And we can do this off of any of the 7 notes in the key, and those will give us the different modes of C major. And each one of these modes has a name. Let's go through them. The mode created off the first note in the scale, which is really just the scale itself, is called the Ionian mode. If we start on the second note of the scale, go up to that same note an octave higher using the notes from the key, that's called the Dorian mode. We start on the third note and go up to the third note an octave higher, we get the Phrygian mode. The fourth note, we get Lydian. Fifth is Mixolydian. Sixth is Aeolian. And then the 7th is Locrian. Now, the next piece of the puzzle is to start breaking down these modes and analyzing them. Now, in this YouTube video, I can tell you what modes are, the theory behind them, how you can start using them, but to truly master them, it takes time and a guided effort. I've got a full course dedicated to mastering the modes. It's like 2 hours long, 14 videos, and I walk you through how you use this information to unlock your instrument. And so throughout this video, you're thinking, okay, what are the next steps with this stuff? I want to hear more examples. I want to learn more practical usages of the stuff. I want to take a look at the finer details. I cover all this stuff in the modes course. It's a limited release. Grab it while you can. It's only $10 using the link in the description. Anyways, let's get back to it. So in music, the base unit of measurement that we have to measure the distance between 2 different notes is called a semitone. The distance of 1 fret on a guitar is a semitone. If you go 2 semitones, you get a whole tone. 2 frets on guitar is a whole tone. It's worth noting that sometimes tones are called steps, so a whole tone is sometimes referred to as a whole step, sometimes a semitone is referred to as a half step. And so now what we can do to gain a deeper understanding of these modes is to compare the spacings against the major scale. And the major scale is kind of what we've been conditioned to hear. It's the expectation. We use it as a reference point for pretty much everything else in music. So here we've got the C major scale again. And if we look at the spacing between each of those notes, from the first note to the second note is a whole tone, second to the third, whole tone, third to fourth, half tone, fourth to fifth, whole tone, fifth to sixth, whole tone, sixth to seventh, whole tone, and from the 7th note to the 8th note, which is the same note as the first note, just an octave higher, that is also half tone. And now let's put down some numbers representing the scale degrees, giving us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to 1, an octave higher. So why don't we check out the Mixolydian mode that's derived from the key of C. And that would be when we take the 5th note from the key G and play all those notes to a G an octave higher. And so when we're analyzing modes, we need to recalibrate our numbers. The numbers you see above G Mixolydian right now tell us how each note relates back to the C major scale. But we're going to reset them so that we think of the first note in G Mixolydian as the first note in G Mixolydian, not as the 5th note of C. The second note A is the second in relation to G Mixolydian. The third note B is thought of in this analysis as the 3rd note of Mixolydian, not the 7th note of C major for the time being, and so on. So to further analyze this stuff, let's pull up the spacings between the notes. We remember in the major scale, we go whole tone, half tone, whole tone, half tone. But if we look at the Mixolydian mode, the spacings are different. We have 2 whole tones, semitone, 2 whole tones, semitone, then whole tone. And so to truly understand the Mixolydian mode, let's compare it against the major scale. In both the major scale and Mixolydian, from the first note to the respective second note, we see that the spacing is a whole tone. From the second note to the third note, again, it's the same thing. Both of them have a whole tone here. From the third to the fourth, it's a half tone. Fourth to fifth, whole tone. Fifth to sixth, whole tone. But here's where things start to change. From the sixth note to the seventh note in the major scale, we have a whole tone. But from the sixth note to the seventh note in Mixolydian, we have a semitone. And again, what we're doing here is looking at how the spacings within these sets of notes compares to each other. If we were to measure it out from the first note to the seventh note in the major scale, we would see that the entire spacing there is 5 whole tones, 1 semitone, which is 5.5 tones in total. In the Mixolydian mode, from the first note up to the seventh note, we have 4 whole tones, 2 semitones, which is 5 tones in total, which is a half tone lower than what that distance is in the major scale. And so since the seventh note is lower in the Mixolydian mode, we refer to the seventh note here as the flat 7. So this set of Mixolydian spacings applies to not just G Mixolydian, not just the key of C. If you start on any note and play this set of spacings, you're going to get a Mixolydian. Now, I really want to clarify this because there's a mistake in understanding this stuff that's all too common. When people see that the Mixolydian mode has a flat 7, sometimes they assume that all you got to do is just take your seventh note and turn it into a flat note, not a sharp, not a natural, but a flat note. And this is not what this is telling us. Flat 7 is telling us how the notes are spaced in comparison to the major scale. We figure out which specific notes are flat or sharp by knowing what the notes are in the overarching key that the mode that we're looking at is derived from. So with this, we've done our analysis in the G Mixolydian mode, but we can also do this analysis for all the modes. And again, this is something that we cover in great depth in my modes course, which you can pick up for only $10 using the link in the description. And so the next step here is to understand the harmonic implication of modes, which means how this all ties into chords, which really helps us figure out how to use this stuff practically. And so each mode has a chord that's linked to it. And to figure out what chord this is, we take the first note, the third note, the fifth note, and the seventh note of any mode, play them all together, and that will give us a 4-note seventh chord. Let's look at our second mode, Dorian, and I'm going to label each note again using a number. If we take our first, third, fifth, and seventh notes of this mode, we would have a 1, a flat 3, a 5, and a flat 7. Played all together gives us a minor 7 chord. And so one of the things that you can think about is if you see a minor chord, which is just a simplified version of a minor 7 chord, or a minor 7 chord, you can play the Dorian notes to give you a Dorian flavor. So if I come across a D minor 7, I could play a D Dorian. 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, as they relate to that chord. I don't necessarily need to play these notes in order. If I come across a D minor 7 chord and I'm soloing over top of it, if I'm drawing from these notes, I'm going to get that D Dorian flavor. And so if we do this kind of breakdown and we figure out which chords are linked to which modes, this is what we get. Ionian is a major 7, Dorian is minor 7, Phrygian is minor 7, Lydian is major 7, Mixolydian is dominant 7, Aeolian is minor 7, and Locrian is minor 7 flat 5. And so notice how there's 3 different modes that have minor 7 chords linked to them and 2 modes that have major 7 chords linked. Check it out. Here's where things start to get really cool. If I'm playing a song that just sits on D minor 7 the whole time, I can play either a D Dorian, a D Aeolian, or a D Phrygian over top. And each of these modes has a different musical flavor. Watch as I sit on a D minor 7 and then alternate between D Dorian, D Aeolian, and D Phrygian. And the reason why these modes have different sounds is because of the non-chord tones, or what we call the extensions. Because remember, every minor 7 mode is going to have the 1, the flat 3, the 5, and the flat 7. It's the other notes that change the characteristic. And looking at the Dorian mode again, those notes that we didn't add to our chord at first can be brought into the equation. We call them extensions. However, we don't refer to them as the second, the fourth, and the sixth. Since we're bringing them in alongside the chord tones, we kind of imagine that we're putting them on top. We're putting them there an octave higher. In which case, the second is actually 9 notes higher than the first note. So we call it the 9. The fourth is 11 notes higher. We call it the 11. The sixth becomes the 13. And so when we're using a minor 7 chord coming from Dorian, we of course are using the 1, the flat 3, the 5, and the flat 7, but we can also accompany those notes with the 9, the 11, and the 13, whether that be as part of the chord, as part of the melody, or part of a solo. The chord tones connect you to the chord. The extensions give you the modal flavor. We can do the same analysis for every mode, and with each mode, the chord tones are the 1, 3, 5, and 7, which tells us the respective 4-note chords, and then each mode has its set of extensions, which bring in the modal flavor. We do discuss the finer details in the modes course, and we do a deep dive, 2 lessons on each one of these modes to really hash out the finer details. And so when a chord is playing, and we're playing a solo, over top of this chord, we want to make sure that the notes that are contained within the chord are the same notes that we're playing in the solo. So the chord tones are going to stay the same in the chord and in the solo. But with the extensions, assuming they're not being played in the chord, that's where we get some lenience over here. Now, with everything that we do in music, this is not a hard and fast rule. This is a guideline. This is the expectation, but there's always exceptions here. And so now we got a pretty good idea about how modes work. The next step is figuring out how we then take this information to the guitar. And this is where we have something that's unique to our instrument. See, the guitar, it's tricky to navigate. And so what we can do is actually use the modes as a system to navigate the fretboard. So check this out. If I play an Ionian mode, starting on G, which would be G Ionian, starting on the lowest G on my guitar neck, which is the low G on the E string here, if I play that G Ionian mode until I can't play any more notes without moving my hand, I get this. And so that gives us all the notes that are available in the key of G in what we're going to call the Ionian shape. The shape's relationship to the Ionian mode is we're starting the shape on the first note from the overarching key, just like we do the Ionian mode. But if I move my hand up so that my index finger is now starting on the A and played the notes from the key of G to the notes from the key of G as high as I can go without changing positions, I'm now going to get what's called the Dorian shape. And this gives us all the notes that are available in the key of G in this area of the guitar neck here. We call this the A Dorian shape because we're playing the Dorian shape starting on an A. And like the Dorian mode, the Dorian shape starts on the 2nd degree of the overarching major scale. And I can keep doing this all the way up the guitar neck, getting the Phrygian shape, Lydian shape, Mixolydian shape, Aeolian shape, and Locrian shape. And so if you know all the mode shapes from the key of G right across the guitar neck, you're going to know how to access the G major notes all across the guitar neck. If I'm trying to find the notes from G major to create a solo or a melody down here, I would use the F sharp Locrian shape to find those. If I go up here, I use the C Lydian shape, which gives me the G major notes in this position. And then if we change keys, everything moves around in relation to the new key. But really what we're doing here is we're building a system that gives us instant access to any note within any key. And ideally you get to the point where this stuff is second nature and you can use these mode shapes to instantly and effortlessly create. And this is something that takes time and practice to master. We look at a number of drills and exercises as to how you can do this in the modes course. And so now we're going to talk about the final and most advanced step in utilizing modes. And this is seeing all the potential chord tones for all the different chords from a key within all of the different mode shapes. And this last step was probably the biggest thing that I've done for my guitar playing, but it also took a lot of time and a lot of effort, so you got to be patient with it. And so once we've gotten to know the fingering of each one of the mode shapes inside and out, the next step is figuring out how all of the notes relate to each potential chord. So let's say I'm accessing the notes of G major through the third mode shape of G major, which would be the B Phrygian shape. Here's how each one of these notes relates back to a G major 7 chord. This is the 3rd, the 11th, the 5th, the 13th, the 7th, the 1, 9, and so on. But then if the chord changes, the relationship between these notes and the underlying chord also changes. So say an E minor 7 starts to play, well, here's how each one of those notes relates to the E minor 7. The first note, which was the 3rd of G major, is now the 5th of E minor. The second note, which was the 11th of G major, is now the flat 13 of E minor. Flat 7 of E minor, the 1, the 9, the flat 3rd, and so on. So there's 7 different mode shapes and 7 diatonic chords that can be happening underneath. To understand the relationship between all the modes and all the chords gives you 49 things to work on. This is a big undertaking. It took a long time for this to become second nature, but now this is just how I see the guitar neck. And the benefit of this is there's no guesswork. I know how each note is going to sound, how it's going to tie into every possible chord that's happening underneath, which has allowed me to bring a whole new dimension into my playing. And ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Those are the modes, and that's why it's important to learn them. And of course, we can go deeper into this stuff if you want to do that with me. Check out my modes course. It's available for a limited time. It's only $10 when you use the link in the description. And make sure you check out my free ebook, which can be a great resource as you learn this stuff. And if you're wondering about the guitar I was playing in this video, this is the Otera TK1. This is my guitar brand. We sold out of these within 5 days of launching. If you want to stay tuned on what's going on with this brand and when the next drop is going to happen, you can sign up for our wait list using the link in the description. Thank you all for watching. Until next time, look after yourselves, look after each other, look after the planet. I'm Samurai Guitarist, and I'll see you again soon.